Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Angel's Haven. Today I'm going to talk to you about my experience with the Honeywell portable evaporative cooler that I bought. I will put the model number and other specs in the description of this video. I'm doing this today because I'm 90% sure I'm going to return it, and I want to share my experiences both with buying, selecting, and using this machine. I did do a review of this on Amazon. I originally gave it 3 stars. I downgraded it to 2, and I will explain a little bit what my issue with it is. Let me say first of all that I did research evaporative coolers. I did know that they were not air conditioners. I did not want an air conditioner. I don't like cold air on my body. And so I thought that the evaporative cooler was more appropriate for me because all the claims were that it would lower the temperature in your space enough to make it comfortable. Let me also say that I live in a fairly comfortable climate. We do get days here 100 or higher. Not many and not for a long time, but we've had one. It's July 1st, and I did use the cooler on that date, and it really didn't do much in the house. Also, as you know, I live in a tiny house that's 8.5 by 24. It is about 200 square feet. But it has 11.5-foot ceilings on the high side, 9.5 on the low side. So I did bump up a model in size. This one is supposed to cool 278 square feet. That certainly should be enough for my space. And when I tried it on a day that had 91 degrees outside, it lowered the house maybe 6 degrees at first, but then it never lowered it beyond that, and as it continued to run, it actually got hotter in here. So when I tried it on a day that it was 100 out, it lowered it maybe 4 or 5 degrees after about an hour, and that seemed reasonable. But then it got hot again in here, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why. So take a look at your weather before you decide to buy one, and I'll talk to you about using this one in case you're considering this actual unit. So let me tell you first of all that I had a lot of trouble the first day I got it. The directions said to fill the water to the minimum line and not exceed the maximum line. That was faulty directions. What it should have said is there is a white float, and you can see that white. It looks like a line to you, but it's actually a little bar or a float, a vertical float. And what the directions should have said was to put in water until the float appears above the minimum line and not above the maximum line. So that was a problem. I ended up with water coming out of that seam, and I called the company in a panic, and it took me 3 tries to get someone that knew what I was talking about. And he agreed that the book was not very well written, and I'm sorry if my finger went in front of the camera. It's just the breaks of the game when you use a cell phone for a camera. So I'm going to pause this and turn this machine, and I'll be right back. So this is where the water goes in, and you can see the honeycomb filter. And it does have a remote control. I never put batteries in it. I've had this thing about 2 weeks. I've used it 3 times. And so the water goes in there, and I'm going to try to turn the phone so you can see where the float is. Hopefully you can see the float. So you pour the water in there. It takes, I can't remember, the book says how much, maybe 2 gallons. And when the white float sticks up above the minimum line, you're at the minimum level, and when it goes all the way up and the top of it is at the maximum line, you're at the maximum level. On the top of the unit, there is an ice receptacle, and you put ice in there. That is the only way that you get cooling. In other words, if there's no ice in that compartment, it's basically just a giant fan. The ice melts in about 30 minutes if you fill that compartment, and that's my determination is that's why it stops cooling. So you notice a drop in temperature in the first hour, 45 minutes to an hour, and that's because there's ice in there and the water going through that honeycomb is cold. Once that ice melts, it goes back to being just a fan. Unless you are willing to continually put ice in it, it's not going to be cold, it's just going to blow air. And it costs $200. I can get a fan for $30 or $40 that blows as hard as this thing does and takes up less space. That's the long and short of it. It's only a fan unless it has ice in it, and then it's a cold fan. Don't let anybody tell you different. So these are the controls. Let me focus. You see power, cool, swing, speed, timer, and mode. I read the book. I don't really understand those, but essentially the mode is the amount of air that's coming on. The speed is how fast it's coming on. Swing makes it go back and forth like an old-fashioned fan. And timer turns it off when you don't want it, or the number of hours that you want it. The difference between cool and not cool apparently is if you put ice in it and you press cool, it opens something to let that ice drip in the honeycomb. I don't really know. I think that's what happens, but I don't really know for sure what that does. It does have a book, but the book was probably written in another language other than American English and translated to American English, and not very expertly. I couldn't translate something to another language, so I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that it's not a very good manual. So that's the unit. The air blows out of the front, and the way it works, I'm going to pause and turn it around again. Okay, so that's the back of the unit, and it draws the ambient air in, I believe, through there. It goes through that honeycomb filter and out the front of it. The idea is supposed to be that it continually draws air in through a nearby open window. I have that window open, and the air from the room as well, and it warms that, it takes the warm air, takes it through that honeycomb filter, which is filled with water, and sends the moist air out that. So if that water is room temperature, the moist air is room temperature. If that water is cold from the melting ice, the moist air is cold. And that's why as soon as there's no more melting ice, it's not cold air anymore. I think. I don't really know, but I had a dialogue with an Amazon technician, and that's what he said. I asked for a transcript of that dialogue, and it never came. I'm not surprised. I asked him if it was basically a fan, and he said, yes, it's basically a fan. I asked him how it was supposed to cool, and he said, stand in front of it. Okay, literally, he said, maximum cooling benefit if you stand in front of it. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't stand in front of my air conditioner. Not since I was a kid making noises in front of a fan. So that's the Honeywell portable evaporative cooler. It is portable. It's on casters. You can see them down there. It's easy to move. I'm going to roll it into my shower or onto my porch to empty the water from it. I kept the box because I bought it on a 30-day return. I've emailed the company and asked them a few questions to see if they tell me anything different than what I've just told you. They haven't answered yet. It's actually not Honeywell that services it, or rather is the customer service. It's some third party. I did talk to a nice supervisor there when the water came out of the seam. I've emailed and asked to have him answer my questions, but I haven't heard back yet. And as far as I can tell, I'm correct that this is just a $200 fan. I had a chair in that spot. I live in a tiny house. I don't really need a 3-foot tall $200 fan. I don't even know if I need anything, but I certainly don't need a $200 fan. So that's my video about the Honeywell evaporative cooler. I did a lot of research for months and months and tried this option, and I don't think it's working. Today I have a sweater on. I want you to know I do not feel heat the way other people do. If you feel heat, you might want to get air conditioning. I don't think, unless you live in one room in a zero humidity climate and you put ice in the well all the time, constantly, I don't think this evaporative cooler is worth the money. I don't have an ice maker in my tiny house. I have to fill ice cube trays. I would have to spend all day putting ice in this thing to make it cold in here, or not cold, to maintain the 4 to 7 or so degree drop that initially occurs while there's ice in it. I would have to continually make ice, empty ice cube trays, and put them in that compartment. I just don't think that's worth it. Might be worth it to you, it's not worth it to me. So that's what I have to say about evaporative coolers. Honeywell is not the problem. The problem is the manual nature of the need to fill the ice compartment, and the fact that if you don't keep it filled with ice, I think it's not anything but a big cumbersome fan. So thanks for spending a few minutes of my tiny life with me. I hope this has been somewhat helpful to you. If you're going tiny and trying to decide how to cool it, that's my take on the evaporative cooler method. And thanks for spending a few minutes of my tiny life with me, and I will see you next time.